Morning to everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the use of artificial intelligence in education. This webinar organized by the Actuarial Association of Europe. My name is Rafael Moreno Ruiz, and I am a member of the Education Committee of the Actuarial Association of Europe, and currently I am the chairperson of the committee. And the other presenter today with me will be Olivier Lopez, who is also a member of the Education Committee. And both of us were in the working group that prepared a document that I will be referring to in a couple of minutes. And specifically, Olivier was one of the main authors of the technical content of this paper. So I hope this webinar will be very interesting for all of you. I will start sharing the first presentation we will be using. I hope you all can see the presentation. And these are we both, the presenters, Olivier and me. And this will be the agenda. After this brief introduction, we will go for the first part of the webinar, in which I will be making a quick look on the CPD paper or guidelines for education on data science and artificial intelligence that the Education Committee of the AAE produced. It was last year. And then we will start with the most interesting parts of the presentation. Both of them will be presented by my colleague Olivier. Part 2 will be focused on the challenges and opportunities of generative AI in education. And part 3 will have a more practical approach. So learning how to develop generative AI in actuarial applications. And in the last part of the webinar, we will have some time for Q&A, question and answer with the presenters. If you have any question, please post it on the Q&A section, and we will go to review them in the last part of the webinar. And another practical information is that this webinar, this session, is being recorded, and it will be available on ActuView in short time. And good, after this presentation, this introduction, let me go for the first part. It will be also brief because the most interesting part, that as I was saying, will be the part 2 and 3. And I will be making a quick look on a document which the Education Committee produced in its scope of work. It was last year, as I was mentioning, in the context of a general move or develop to increase the focus on artificial intelligence and data science, which we are experiencing in different institutions in the actuarial, let's say, actuarial world. First of all, let me refer to a working group which the International Actuarial Association launched. I think it was 2 years ago, and this working group, which is a very big working group, specifically has a work stream on education. At the same time, several big associations, like for example the German Association, have developed their own programs or even credentials in the area of data science and artificial intelligence. So this is something very important to consider. It's not only the German Association. I think that the French Association has also a program in force. So in this context, it was the Actuarial Association of Europe which started putting the focus on artificial intelligence. There was a paper produced a bit before this one from the Education Committee. I am referring to another one produced by the Professionalism Committee, which is very interesting. But the Education Committee, in its scope of work, decided to constitute a task force and produce this paper I'm referring, which is aimed to provide support actuarial associations and individual actuaries in identifying topics in the field of data science to enhance corresponding knowledge and skills. So this paper has two destinations, two users, the associations and the individual actuaries. And it's focused on CPD, how to orientate CPD activities to help actuaries acquiring these knowledge and skills they think that they need in the area of data science and artificial intelligence. So specifically, it can be applied by association, and it's happening. We know that it's happening in some extent by associations in the development of CPD activities designed for their members. This paper, this document, I like to say that it's kind of a guidelines, although in the title you can see the word guidelines, but it serves as a guidelines. Due to the fast evolution we are living in the area of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, this document must be seen as a living document. So we produced it last year, but we will need to be working on it to consider updatings very briefly. In this document, we had in our minds that every part of the education of actuaries in Europe is based on our. I'm quite sure you all know this document, the AAE core syllabus for actuarial training in Europe, which is the document which sets the basic education for actuaries to become an actuary, and the guidelines that go with the core syllabus itself. And it's important to consider this because in this core syllabus we already have some contents, some topics related with data science, machine learning, and eventually with artificial intelligence. And in this document, what we do is to package on 4 areas: descriptive statistics, probability, statistical inference, and econometrics, machine learning and simulation, and ethics and professional standards. And in these 4 areas, we put all the different topics that you can find across the 9 learning areas that you can find in the AAE core syllabus. That's why you can find the numbers here. All these topics in all these 9 learning areas, we have put them in this table and packaged on 4 areas. So it's important that we are aware that in our current core syllabus, we already have contents related with data science and artificial intelligence. The core of the CPD on data science paper is related with the all the CPD knowledge that we need in different areas related, most of them with concrete techniques. So we have clustering, the area of clustering, the area of regression and prediction, and thirdly, interpretability, which is very important. It's important. This is my personal, maybe my personal thinking, that it's very important that every technique is not considered a black box. Talking from an actuarial perspective, I think I mean. Then the fourth area is natural language processing, with 5 further advanced topics, and lastly, data ethics and fairness, which is very important because we need to consider that we are talking about education in this area, but from the point of view of a profession. And then just making a reference to the last part of the document, which refers to professional foundation. This is something that can be very useless from the point of view of an actuary, but we considered when we produced this paper, we considered that it could happen that some data scientists who wish to apply their professional skills to actuarial issues and any kind of problems in the insurance and industry could consider this paper. And for these professionals, so not non-actuaries, but data scientists playing a role or wishing to play a role in this area, it was very important to provide clear indication that it's very important to have sufficient knowledge of the business environment, because it's not only applying data techniques for data analysis. No, it's necessary to understand the environment in which we are doing it. So it's very important to have basic knowledge of insurance, legal and regulatory framework, quantitative risk management, and in general, having a solid knowledge of key actuarial concepts and models. And in this part of the document that you can find in the website of the AAE, of course, it refers again to the AAE core syllabus, because all these parts I was mentioning are included in the AAE core syllabus. Okay, so this was for my glass of water, because my throat has any problem. And I will give the floor to my colleague, Olivier Lopez. Olivier, please.
Thank you, Rafael, and good morning to everyone. So we'll start sharing the slides in a few seconds. Now, I presume that you all see the slides. So just perhaps to make the connection and the transition with what Rafael just told us. When we were working on this document on CPD guidelines, as Rafael said, we like to think it as something that is living material. And the question that we are now focused on, the question of generative AI. When we started our work on the CPD guidelines, there was not so much buzz around ChatGPT and large language models as now. And the question was, should we include generative AI in the CPD guidelines, since application in the actuarial world seemed a little bit far? And we definitely were right to put that at one of the points in the guidelines, because you see that right now it's very difficult to talk about AI without positioning yourself with respect to generative AI. First, a disclaimer, the idea is not to give a full presentation about the application of generative AI on education, and it would also be very difficult to see all the implication on the actuarial profession. So we chose some focus on particular topics. And the first one, as this is a webinar from the Education Committee of the Actuarial Association of Europe, the idea is to start with education and to start by asking ourselves the question, what will be the changes, what are already the changes and the disruptions introduced by generative AI in the context of education of actuaries, of the training of actuaries. And you will see that this will echo the technical part, the third part of the webinar related to use cases. So perhaps just also to mention that do not hesitate to ask questions in the Q&A part of the Zoom session. We will have some time to answer these questions. And since you are many participants, if we do not have the time, we will try to answer them and provide you some feedback afterwards. So do not censor yourself regarding questions. So as I said, generative AI, it's a change in the actuarial practice. It's also, of course, a change in the way you perform actuarial education. And this is a question that was many times mentioned in the meetings of the Education Committee of Actuarial Association for Europe. And so since we are actuaries, we like to start with numbers. And so the idea is that we made some short survey that was sent to the FMAs and to the representative of the education committees of the FMAs to have some idea of what was the general mood regarding generative AI with respect to education. So a short survey, you see the opening dates, and let's also mention that in Europe, we have different systems regarding education. You have associations that are university-based, like France or Spain, but you also have associations that are based on exam performed by the association, like Germans, for instance. So you have different type of positions. So you need to take into account that there is this heterogeneity and situations that are not necessarily the same. We received a good number of answers in the sense that we also tried to, we imposed to have only one answer per association, even for associations that have many universities involved with potentially different practices. And as you can see, the questions were around three types of topics. So if there are new policies that are introduced in education to regulate the use of Gen AI by students or people who apply to the association's exam. Also, very important, something about the perception of what will be the role of Gen AI, and if there is a need for adapting the curriculum, adapting in terms of what type of exams, for example, what types of control you use, but also adapting in terms of contents. So I will not present you the whole survey because it would be very boring. So we just selected a few important questions, and we will be later giving a full analysis of this survey, but it's just to give you some trends. So first of all, and let's also say that some answers will be pretty obvious in some sense, no big surprise, but it's always good to measure that. So what you see, first of all, regarding the use of generative AI by students or applicants, you see that there is a large majority in the answers that shows us what we can see at a general level at the university and in the education world in general. Gen AI is now a regular tool used by many people, many students or applicants in association. So other type of question about the perception of the role of generative AI in actuarial science. So here you had so here you see the answers. First remark that we can see is that no association thinks that it will have a neutral impact. So among those who answered, of course. So the idea is that it's not simply a tool, it's not some accident of history, it's something that will have, according to education representative, some impact on actuarial science, as I said, not only as a tool. So with different degrees, you have a majority that says it will be useful, but it will not replace completely what we have, which seems totally reasonable. And you also have a significant number that shows us that think that it will be very crucial to provide innovation in the actuarial world. So again, we are regarding the poll, we are with small numbers, so we should always be cautious about the magnitude of these numbers. But still, you see that it is integrated in the mind that it should be a key concept around which we need to position to make actual science evolve. And regarding the very broad other category, you have essentially answers that confirm the fact that they think that Gen AI will transform some actual activities, and also something I would like to stress, several mention of the possibility of errors in terms in the results provided by Gen AI, which is clearly a matter of concern. There is this question of hallucination of AI. So this is, of course, a question which is also related to the need to control, to criticize the result provided by this type of tools. It's something that is also mentioned and very present in many other questions, of many other answers in this survey. So where is GenAI tools used in the curriculum, if it is. So you see here that there were several answers that were proposed. So again, the category other is the most delicate to interpret. But you see that as a research assistant, there is a wide, an important use of GenAI as some, let's say, advanced Google search tool. Somehow it's a bit more because it provides you many references and many things like that. So this is the main category of answers if you remove the category over. You see that even for writing, for communication, for dissertation, you also have some use in some association, and also it's also used sometimes to solve some exams, some problems. So it's not necessarily always considered as something you should ban from the universities or from the exams. It's considered sometimes as a tool, in general, in specific tasks. Of course, not about the fundamentals of actuarial mathematics and actuarial theory, because you need, of course, to be sure that the students and applicants understand correctly the concept. But generally, you saw that, for example, for coding, you have some places where GenAI is authorized with, of course, the need to be careful about the errors that were mentioned. So also another question, which is summarized on the right hand side. So GenAI is massively used, but on the other hand, it's never used without specific cases in which it is prohibited or regulated. For example, if it is used in thesis or dissertation, usually we see that in the comments of the survey, it is asked to mention that generative AI was used and why and how it has been used, for which purpose. So that's something that should be mentioned, of course. And without surprise, many prohibits the use during exams. So in some cases, you have, for example, associations that perform exam using pen and paper. So of course, it is forbidden in this context. But even for associations that perform exam with computers, usually there is a prohibition. So you use it to learn, to do specific tasks, a specific project, but when it comes to a regular exam, there is a prohibition. Almost so still a few numbers, but we will move on to another topic, of course. But an important question, of course, in this context is how do you ensure academic integrity? If you consider the case of writing dissertation using ChatGPT, it can be a problem not to regulate and to be sure that students or applicants did not perform this thesis simply relying on these tools and produced something that is personal. So some trend that should be mentioned is the weight of oral defenses. So you see among the answers that there is an increasing weight of oral defenses of master thesis or of project, or even some exams that are now done in terms of oral form. because in this configuration, you have the opportunity to discuss with the person and to see if the concept are well possessed by this person. And there is also the question of measures, how you try to control that there is no use of phones or laptop, of course. Also, not completely surprising, you have a trend in introducing some ethics related teaching on the use of generative AI, which is also, of course, related to the ethical part of the course syllabus of the actuarial associations. And about the perspective, and as I promised, it's the last sequence of numbers. You see that, as I said, there is also the question of adapting the way we perform exams, the way we control, but there is also the question to adapt the content of the teaching to the fact that actuaries will have to use, or even in some situations to develop generative AI solutions. And so we wanted to have the perception of the association regarding the fields in which there will be evolutions in the use of generative AI. And you see that, first of all, among the answer, none of the associations answered that there will be no change regarding the contents of the training. So what do actuaries need in the opinion of these associations, and especially on the education part of these associations? So you see, of course, ethics, as I mentioned in the previous slide. You have also a vast majority that thinks that we do not only need to use generative AI, we also need to understand how it works. It's somehow also related to ethics, because if we want to be confident about the results, we need, of course, to know how these results have been produced. And you also have a significant number, and this will echo the last part of the webinar of today, that think that we also need to help actuaries to build, to develop generative AI solution. And there is also the question of prompt engineering. So prompt engineering, it's more related to being a user of generative AI, of typically large language models like ChatGPT or the chat of Mistral. It's the way to phrase correctly to a question to get the proper answer from the large language model, which is trained aside from the company that is using this solution. Okay, so you see that in these answers, many think that you need to learn as actuary to use pre-trained generative AI solution and typically large language models. But you also see that there is a need probably to learn how to develop yourself and to understand and to develop some solution related to generative AI. And so, as expected also, you have many associations that are conscious that the ground is moving and that the situation is evolving very fast, that probably there will be adaptation and potentially important adaptation of their policy regarding generative AI in the future. There is also something that comes a few times, the fact that we are also waiting for the regulation on GenAI, the general regulation on GenAI evolved to know how to position ourselves with respect to that. And of course, as you may imagine, in the university-based system, you have many discussions that are constantly evolving. And that's something which is really to be continued, as you see the three dots here at the bottom of the slide. Before ending this part, so just a few conclusions about the questionnaire. First of all, there is no panic in the answers. Clearly, GenAI is identified as maybe not a complete game changer, but at least some new deal. But on the opposite, it's really important to see that there is also a positive way to incorporate it in the education. That's at least my perception analyzing the answers of the questionnaire. And it's also kind of relief to see also that the Actuarial Association started to adapt and to take this subject as something very important. The need of ethics regarding the use is, of course, key, as mentioned several times. And to conclude this part, perhaps a few words about errors and hallucinations of generative AI, which is a big matter of concern. So just to end this part, I wanted to share with you some late night conversation with ChatGPT I had yesterday. So most of it is in French, but French mixed with equations. So even if you did not study French at school, you will see probably that there are some things that are not so good. So first of all, you see that on a basic problem, and that's the part that I translated, that's the left-hand side of the slide. You see that ChatGPT is capable of a very important mistake. Here, typically, the conclusion, here you see, I wanted to highlight the last line here. But okay. So you see that, for example, it concluded that the quantity is always positive, while obviously, in some cases, the logarithm of a quantity can be negative if it's smaller than 1 and positive if it's larger than 1. And so if you see the reasoning is very wrong, to be honest. So what is the right-hand side of the slide? And again, you do not need to read everything. It's just some graphic example. When you say to ChatGPT or to any type of generative AI like that ChatGPT is wrong, first of all, ChatGPT is very polite in accepting that it made a terrible mistake. And then it tries to provide to you another solution. So here you see, if you see only graphically, it seems to be very structured. So you have, first of all, the reasoning that was wrong, and then it is showing where was the mistake. And so if you see that from very far off, or if you are typically a student not well informed, not very strong about the concept within the course, you can take it for granted, and it seems very nice, but it's also very wrong in the sense that it repeats many times here the same mistake. So there is right now this problem, and this reason why we need to incorporate, to learn how to criticize the results that are provided by these tools. And right now, the users are not necessarily doing that. This may also have impact on the question of codings, because coding errors also can happen very often. So there is clearly this need of control. And also in a very evolving context, because probably in a few months or year, ChatGPT will have learned and probably will not make the same mistakes. But still, this is an alert. Just to say also, where does this error comes from? Because if you ask directly the question related to the basic actual mathematics that I mentioned to ChatGPT, probably it will not give you a wrong answer. The thing is that I started by asking it things related to advanced topics, typically related to copula analysis and advanced things regarding that. And it's something that seems to be the case with these languages. For basics of mathematics, they are relatively well trained. But when you start to look at concepts that are related to typically things that you learn at a master degree or even after that, it can completely go in a wrong direction right now. So it's also reassuring, but also a matter of concern. Okay, so that was for this second part. I don't know if there are questions. I cannot see them in the presentation. Of course, if you have question right now, we have first of all a few minutes to answer them. Otherwise, we will be moving to this last part, which is a little bit more technical, related to the application in AI and how and the connections between traditional actual mathematics and these generative AI solutions. So since I do not see no question, we will also have some time in the end to answer them. But I will start with this last part. First of all, if we are thinking about education for actuaries, typically we want to perform education so that are related to practical applications. It's not always only to build their spirit, let's say. It's to respond to some needs and some applications that are related to the fields in which actuaries play an important role. So I'm not pretending, as I said, that this photography is exhaustive of the use of Gen AI, but you can try a very rough categorization of applications that start to emerge in the industry regarding Gen AI. And essentially, I classify them into three topics. And I will focus on the last one, which is probably the one that is the less often mentioned, as it is probably the most technical. So the first thing is Gen AI becomes your new assistant, and you use LLMs to help you in performing some standard tasks, to get some references, to make some synthesis of some corpus of text, to perform some basic coding that you want to incorporate somewhere. So it's a way to accelerate traditional tasks performed by actuaries. And in this case, it's a matter of prompt engineering, which is, of course, very important because it will speed up many tasks that you perform, and so it will increase the efficiency of actuaries. In this, regarding prompt engineering, just to say, it's also it's not so simple as that, in the sense that it is also a way to learn how to formulate rigorously your question. And so we also have in education the role, of course, to provide answers to students, to provide knowledge and skills, but also to make them learn how to ask the proper questions. So that's a part of prompt engineering, which in my opinion is quite interesting. So you also see, I'm not sure it works completely right now, to be honest, the question of synthetic data sets, in the sense that you want to share data, but you have confidentiality issues with some data. So you try to produce fake data that look like the original one, and that allow you to allow some third party to perform some task, to look at some models on it, without breaking any confidentiality and any privacy. So this, for example, has been used not only in actuarial science. You have some research paper and research use case in which you see that, for example, in the medical sector, to reproduce some artificial patients in order to be able to transmit this data and to play with it. And there is also the scenario simulation. So that's the example I will expand because it's technically related to the challenge of being able to designing generative networks. So not necessarily in language. The example I will show you, it's much simpler than that, but you will see that the Gen AI tools can be very useful for this task. You also have, of course, the adaptation of large language models that can be done. But what I mentioned regarding scenario simulation, it's essentially that you have a risk and you want to project this risk in the future, or to simulate many replication of this risk to know how your portfolio will adapt. It can be economic scenario, it can be climate scenario in some cases. And this is where you can use the pipeline of generative AI to help, if you are familiar, of course, with the simple concept. So a few slides to briefly show you how it works, and only a part. So if you are already familiar with that, you will not learn many things, but just to fix some concept. So you have essentially three main types of tools. The first one are generative adversarial network. You also have diffusion models, and you also have, I did not mention it in the slide, but it's variational auto-encoders, especially for text. But let's focus first on GANs. A spectacular application of GANs, it's one that is that you can play with if you go to this website. It's related to the generation of fake faces. So this is the website This Person Does Not Exist, and it's one of the first, let's say, examples of GANs. It's from more than 10 years ago, I believe. And so the idea is that all these three guys that you see in front of you, Rafael and I, are real, but these three guys are not. They simply do not exist. And you see that it's very difficult to guess, to understand, to detect that they are fake. But I mentioned that to show you that still there are some things that are not completely perfect. So, for example, you very often have problems with the background. because the generative AI managed to produce this fake photograph of people that do not exist, but the backgrounds are more delicate to learn. You also see that if you look carefully, there are problems with symmetry. It can be seen if you zoom a little bit on the glasses of this non-existing guy. The glasses are not symmetric. You see the branch of the glasses are not exactly at the same spot, and perhaps the form also of the glasses are not the same from left to right. So it can be an aesthetical choice, but it's still rare to have dissymmetry in glasses. Also, a frequent problem is that you often see people with earrings that are not the same on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. And there is also this problem regarding teeth, especially incisors that are not placed at the right position. So if you look carefully, you see many people who look a little bit strange. So why do I mention that? First of all, to say that this type of mistakes or things that are odd tend to reduce considerably through time. As a matter of fact, 10 years ago, when I was showing this result to students, I was directly connecting to the website, and and very fast, I found some guy that looked strange. Here, I performed several trials before obtaining these photographs that all have a small issue. So you see that it's improving. So is it improving very fast? Not so sure. 10 years ago, the network had time to learn. The other reason for me to mention this example is that we see that the network had no prior knowledge about what is a face. It tries to reproduce something, but it does not have previous knowledge of the physical phenomenon it has. And so this explains why it makes mistakes and why it takes time to learn. And as I will mention, time will be key. And finally, there is a question when you say that, but is it useful for actuaries to generate fake faces? Not so sure, but you will see that the procedure, the pipeline that is behind, can be used for other purpose. So, as I said, I'm not here to give you a course on generative adversarial network, but it's just to give you the idea. So this type of techniques, first, so here it's in the example of images, but you can generate many things other than images. First, you have some random noise. You generate some random noise, and then this goes into a black box, which is called the generator, and this black box produces fake images. This black box, it's a deep neural network, so many parameters, and so it can transform this noise in many things that are different. And you mix these fake images with true images that are in your learning sample, and you send it to a second network, which is called the critic. It's why you call it adversarial, because the aim of the generator is to produce fake images that look like true. And the critic, its aim is to detect if the images that are mixed, which are the true ones and which are the fake. And so the idea is that the two black boxes will improve iteratively. So the critic will be better in detecting fake images. In the same time, the generator will need to push up its level and to produce images that are more like the true ones. And so this is this mutual emulation that will produce in the end some generators that can fool many observers. So that's the general idea. Also, in the big models, you also have some other parts that I did mention. You also have some reinforcement learning parts for those who are familiar with that. But the basic idea is this one. You have a generation and you have a critique. You also have a second class of models that is getting very popular and which is also connected to actuarial mathematics in some sense because it's related to mathematics that are very close to what you see in stochastic calculus when you do some mathematical finance. So the idea here is to start with a picture. So probably this one is true, even though the haircut of the dog is a bit odd, if you want my opinion. But you start from the left with a true image, and then you add some noise. So it's the opposite than the previous one. The previous one, you have some random noise at the beginning, and then you transform it to have a clear picture. Here, you have some real picture, and you distort it. You add some noise, and in the end, you have something that is purely chaotic. And what you basically do, you basically learn how to reverse this transformation, and you do it on many observations of the database to learn how to transform, to go back from something that is noisy to something that is a structured image. Okay, so that's essentially the idea. And mathematically speaking, and it's why it's linked to the question of scenario generation, it's typically trying to reproduce a distribution in the sense that you have your learning sample, which is made of many observations of the phenomenon that you are interested in. For example, the faces in the first example, the photograph of friends in the graph of generative adversarial network, the photography of dogs in the last example. So this has a distribution. This has been produced by an unknown distribution. And generative techniques, their aim is to try to mimic this distribution, to approach this distribution. So it's something that you often do when you do some scenario generation. Even in some classical examples, sometimes you have a portfolio, you fit a GLM, a generalized linear model, to this portfolio. Then if you want to have simulation of what will happen in the next year, you will use the output of the GLM to simulate what comes next and to have an idea, an approximation of the distribution of next year, for example. What is the difference with GenAI? Nothing in terms of objective, in terms of purpose. The idea is simply that since we are dealing with a black box, it's an advantage and an inconvenience. We can produce distributions that adapt to many things that are difficult to capture by parametric models like GLM. So this is this flexibility that will be precious, especially if you want to make some projection, to simulate what will happen to your portfolio in the next year. You see now generative AI techniques that begin to be used even in some companies to try to do that. And the advantage is that perhaps you will be able to see, to simulate things that are not so obvious than the one that you can simulate with parametric models. This is an advantage and an inconvenience in the sense that also, and this is also related to the need for criticizing that, if you simulate something that is beyond what you saw or what you can imagine? Is it because the generative network is very smart, or is it because it is an hallucination? So that's, of course, the delicate part of the question. So once this has been said, what is the difficulty in applying generative AI in insurance, in actuarial science, especially in insurance? In finance, it's not necessarily the same, but in insurance, one of the difficulty, if you want to simulate what will happen to your portfolio, or if you want to simulate some future climate events, for example, the difficulty is that you often deal with rare events. What I mean by that is more rare than if you look at some other fields that use Gen AI. And that's one of the difficulty. Something that I did not mention, the faces that were generated by this person does not exist. It requires lots and lots and lots of data to learn. Remember, you need to mix the fake images with true images. And the performance of the network will be dictated by the number of observation of true examples that you have in your learning sample. In the case of many large language models, it can be even worse, but in this case of this person does not exist, you see that it's millions of observations that are required to learn efficiently. So if you want to apply it to many insurance use cases, you will be blocked by this small number. And also, if you are interested in the tail of the distribution, like it is the case in natural catastrophes or in reinsurance, it's even worse. So that's a question. Another problem, of course, is that you only reproduced what you saw. It's not completely true in the sense that you can add some things to your network. Something that I did not mention, I forgot to mention it when I gave the examples of images. You can also give your network some prior knowledge. That's all of the Bayesian tools that we have in our Bayesian toolkit that can be used to accelerate the learning, because we know some properties we can accelerate and require less data to learn if you give some information about the phenomenon to the network. Also, you can, if you are, sometimes you also see, I'm not saying that it works for now, but you see attempts to try to simulate some long-term things. If you try to simulate the climate at the horizon 2050, of course, it will be very hard to use only the historical data to do that. So you need to also introduce some expert knowledge, and you have the possibility to include that in your simulation. If you have some scenarios of evolution, you can introduce feature, but just, I'm not saying that it's simple, but it can be done. There is also a question you see in bold that I think is quite important, especially in the insurance business where we have a natural catastrophe in our scope. There is an environmental cost to Gen AI, which is quite important. And so this also advocates for trying to develop models that are smaller, that require less power to be trained. Right now, it's a bit of a brute force. If you think about, as I said, deep neural network, it works because you have long time to learn how to adapt this very complicated machinery. But there are tools to make them learn faster and to be less, to reduce a little bit the environmental cost, and sometimes more than a little bit, and to make them learn faster, which is also, as I said, a problem, since we have a limited amount of data to make them learn. So I will not be very long about this example, but it's just to stress it because I find it very interesting. First of all, because you see many development of that in the recent years, months, and so on, with many research publications, not necessarily only in actuarial science. But I mention it because it's intimately connected with actual mathematics that you learn as an actuary. And you see in this example that if you have this knowledge, if you have this conceptual knowledge, you can put this knowledge into the structure of the network and make it learn much faster. So I will just give an overview of that. I mentioned already the question of the Bayesian framework. So you put the information you have in the prior, but sometimes you also have some theoretical information about the quantities that you are studying. For example, if you are looking at natural catastrophes or catastrophes in general, very often you will know that the target you have, the distribution you want to mimic, it's an AV tail distribution. It's typically a distribution with a Pareto tail. And I'm not giving you a whole course about extreme value theory, but you also have theoretical elements that tells you that it is adapted to use this type of distribution to study the tail in many, many situations. So in this case, if you have this problem, you can use this structure specifically to make things with smaller networks. It's also true in the more complex fields of multivariate extremes, but I will not mention it for now. Just I mentioned two recent references. This one is probably the most simple if you're interested in, and this one is probably the more advanced related to generative networks in the case of multivariate extremes. So just to be honest, the figure on the right-hand side is just to show you a nice graphic. It's just to show you that it is beautiful and colorful, but it's also to print the idea that in this work, you have people who use the information that the distribution is AV tail to define the type of network they use in terms of structure, in terms of what they put in the units of the neural networks. And also, they also start by simulated AV tail variables that then they transform instead of starting with simulated Gaussian variables as you do generally in generative AI because you do not have any ideas in the first place. So they use that and they manage to have something which is far less spectacular than what you can do if you generate faces, but that can be quite useful to perform simulation. And in terms of cost, in terms of data, in terms of energy, in terms of time for learning, which is quite reduced. So it's to mention that, in my opinion, it's a personal view, actual mathematics have a real role to play in optimizing the structures, and it's why, still in my opinion, we need as actuaries to invest and to in appropriating ourselves all of these tools. So general conclusion, and we will then have time for question, and we respected the timeline, which is good. So first of all, what we wanted to show you is, of course, that generative AI is changing many things and that education world adapts to that, but also that it's more than a question of having a new fancy digital tools that will be your virtual assistant. I gave you the example of simulation of scenario where you see some urge of some companies to try to develop such type of tools, but you also have in any situation where you want to simulate a distribution, generative AI tools can be quite important. Regarding education, this is a new source of information. So this also, it's something that was absent from the questionnaire, but from a cognitive perspective, it's also, in my opinion, a change in the way students or applicants or everyone, in fact, thinks in terms of problem solving. And so this is definitely something we should adapt and integrate into our perspective. The ethical use in many senses, in terms of criticizing criticizing the results produced by the network, in terms also of respecting intellectual property. It was not mentioned before, but there is also that. And in terms of fraud, because, for example, for exams, you can also have this problem, is of course key. There is also in the question of the environmental cost, which can also be included in this ethical part. And of course, in the training of actuaries, whether they are students or they are still in the game. I'm sure we are all convinced that data science is now part of our grammar, of our toolkit, and that we need, of course, to understand it and to use. But I would like to stress, but I think the message was clear probably from what I said, that in my opinion, the mistake would be to consider that we are simply users. We see, especially in the field of catastrophes and things like that we have some tools related to actual mathematics that can help us to develop something, as I said, that are probably less spectacular than fake videos of a French president fighting with the mob. But still, that can be useful, and I think it's probably our purpose, our main purpose for society. So thank you for attending. And sorry for the environmental cost, because this image was generated by AI. That's a small thing I authorized myself. And of course, we have now some time for question. I don't see if there are. Yes, perhaps there is. No, if there are any in the chat. So please free to ask question to Rafael and I.
Thank you, Olivier. I'm just seeing that in the Q&A section, we only had one question, but it's, let's say, administrative question. Yes, of course, you can have a certificate of attendance. I think you can have a certificate of attendance, but this is something you need to talk to the AAE Secretariat. I don't know exactly how to do it, but it's possible for sure.
Yes, it's upon a request. There were already some answers related to that, and so the secretary of the AAE will provide you anything related to that.
Yeah. Maybe just to give the opportunity to have any question from the audience, just a comment. For me, it was. I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence, but you are an expert on artificial intelligence from the academia, Olivier. And for me, it was very interesting to learn that it's natural, but I was not aware of it. That you can, using the you were referring to actuarial mathematics, you can accelerate the time that the artificial intelligence needs to learn how to solve a problem. And this is something which is very important, because I think that, as you were mentioning, but I think it needs to be stressed, that it means that we are not only users, but we can be relevant players on it. And this is something that actuaries can do, but other professionals that don't have the same toolkit that as we have in our education can do. So for me, it's something very relevant, Olivier. You were already uh, um, stressing this in your presentation, but it is something that I consider very important. I don't know if you want to mention something more about this.
Yes, perhaps to elaborate a little bit, and just to explain how it plays a role. In fact, the neural networks in general, not necessarily in generative AI, the basics is that we call it artificial intelligence, but it is very dumb in the first place. That is, you have lots of power, you have lots of flexibility because you have a huge machines with many parameters. And you use the fact that you can very fast iterate and improve to improve the quality of your prediction. But in fact, the key, so the theory between neural network, I'm not saying that it is completely stabilized, but you see that there is something related to the question of universal approximation theorems. In the sense that you have a target, you try to approximate something, a function, a distribution, and then if you know some things about the properties of this distribution, you can be clever in the way you approximate it. And you can choose your network so that it directly goes into a subset of possible functions that approximate correctly and efficiently your phenomenon. That's essentially what is used. And in fact, regarding the role of actuaries, because all of these mathematic tools, they are open source, anyone could have access to that, but the advantage that we have is that we have clear industrial problematics and clear constraints. I mentioned the question of catastrophes, the question of extreme events. If you talk to non-actuaries about extreme events, they probably do not have the same definition of that. It's something that is outside of the 95% confidence interval, and that's it. In the case of insurance, we see that it's much more complicated in a world that is changing, with observations that become obsolete very fast. It also plays a role in the fact that they are very, very rare, very scarce.
Very interesting, Olivier.
So there is a question.
We have here a question, because the other two are comments that we appreciate a lot.
Yes.
Thank you for your comment. But now we have a question. I think you can directly read it and answer. Yes.
So I will read it because I'm not sure everyone sees that. The question is about providing an example of prompt for synthetic data. In fact, no. First of all, sorry about that, because I mentioned that, but I'm not an expert of this question. If you want, we can connect later and I can send you some reference, maybe not the most clever one. I'm not sure it's done directly with tools. I need perhaps you need to rebuild a simple generative network to do that. But to be honest, I'm not completely convinced. But that's a personal opinion. I think to be able to reproduce synthetic data sets, especially when you do not know the structure, and especially if they are complex, you need lots and lots of data to learn. And I did not see some spectacular advances right now. It's something that you hear very much about, but not completely sure that it works for now. Sorry. From my vision, which is not... So there is also a question. Could you remind us how far actuarial students go in mastering these methods? In your opinion, what should they be expected to know after 3 years of actuarial studies regarding programs in force, or even 5 years in some if you complete the whole cycle to the master degree? The first part of the answer is it depends. It depends from countries and from the study we made when we were working on the CPD guidelines. We see that there is also, even in a given country, you can see some differences from one university to another when you are in a university-based system. But at least in the university-based system, you see more and more machine learning tools that are in the curriculum. Also, for a very pragmatic question, in my opinion, is that you need to attract students to actuarial studies right now, and that machine learning and artificial intelligence is the magic word. So you need to put that in the curriculum. And right now, something which is again, with no clear number about that, but the predictive part of AI relative to machine learning is relatively well integrated in the curriculum. It's simply to replace generalized linear models by some things that are a little bit more complicated, like neural networks, but not necessarily deep, and random forest, gradient boosting, things like that. So the predictive part, it's the most represented in the curriculum, in my opinion. And regarding generative AI, very few, in my opinion, curriculum have already integrated that, except in some conferences or some introduction to that. So it's, of course, an issue with the constraint that you need to stay strong on all the actuarial grounds before moving to that. But definitely, as you see in the survey, you have many associations that adapt and that also provide a continuous training to learn how to use these topics. So how far should we go? That's the last part of the question. I'm very long in the answer, sorry. But as far as we can with limited time, I think right now tools like generative adversarial networks, it's possible especially for young students who are familiar with machine learning, it's possible to introduce that in the curriculum or in continuous learning afterwards. And I'm not saying that we will be able to challenge some things that are produced by Google or some giant of the web. But still, we can provide things interesting for the industry if we learn the basics of, let's say, generative AI, diffusion models, and variational autoencoders. So I was very long, sorry. And there are two more questions. So what is the purpose of generating images of non-existing person? To be honest, I don't know. It's funny, probably. From what I can think of, I see more harm than actual benefit to society. If so, then why is it not banned or tighter regulated? I think the purpose initially was a demonstration of force to show what these tools could do. very skeptical about the practical use of generating images of non-existing people, to be honest, and totally agree with the need for regulation, especially regarding deepfakes and fake news that can also have an important impact on the actuarial activity.
Yeah, it's a comment. Let me say that it's a comment that it's very well sounded into an ethical framework. So very good comment. Yeah.
And another question, with the increasing integration of AI in the actuarial field, what changes do you anticipate in the responsibilities and skill sets of actuaries over the next few years and in the longer term? So thank you for the question. Very delicate one. First of all, let me dodge a little bit this question by saying that there are several parts. First of all, it's what people from the outside expect from us and what we should do as actuaries, which are not necessarily completely the same. First of all, I think and that's personal, and Rafael, please feel free to comment. But I think this does not change the responsibility of the actuary in the sense that the actuary should be responsible for the recommendation they provide, no matter what tools are used. And so the question is more maybe yourself. Are you confident in providing a recommendation that could lead to the collapse of your company if it is based on generative AI and on something that you are not confident on? So I think the responsibility is essentially the same. The key point is to be able to identify that there is this responsibility, not to forget that there is this responsibility, and not to have the reflex to say, but I said that, but it's the fault of ChatGPT. Otherwise, in the long term, actuaries will be replaced by ChatGPT, and it's not safe, typically. So I'm not sure I answered in a satisfactory way this question, but this is, of course, a quick question. Thank you for asking it.
And my answer would be the same, essentially the same. Yeah, and I could add that I think that it's also the same line as the regulators and the supervisor are working. The supervisor will keep asking you for your responsibility. It's you that you decide what tools are you using.
So there is another question. Wonder, implementing developed triangles based on AI pictures related. Is it possible? Do you know some projects related? So it's an interesting use case. So the idea, so you have triangles, you consider them as images, and you try to generate some of them. So the first remark, if you have numbers, you probably do not, it's probably better not to consider it as images, but as numbers. But I'm not aware on project on that, but it's definitely something that could be done. Just to show you something related in images that is that I saw in some projects. You have attempts to reproduce maps of catastrophes, maps of losses. So typically you consider the losses from an insurance claim as a picture. And you use a generative AI network for pictures to try to reproduce, to have some similar images. So it's an example where you have a physical problem that is translated in terms of image. That's basically the sense of the map of France that I mentioned in the example of the generative network. Right now, just to stress the difficulty, from what I saw from these examples, it's very hard to have something convincing at a large scale. And especially you have difficulty with the extremes, with the tail of the distribution, as very often. And so if you have this problem in your triangles, probably you should be cautious about that. But definitely it's something that could be tried.
We are at the end of the time, Olivier, but I don't know if it's possible to give an answer in 1 minute to this last question, just to not leave it.
Yes.
On the table.
The question is related to coding. For more complex issues, it may give fake answer. Then it accepts my critique and tries to give me a better answer. But Gen AI never says, I don't know. That's perfectly true. And that's something also the actuaries know to do, to say I don't know sometimes. That's why it's precious. Is Gen AI aware of what its answer certainty level is? Not sure about that. Can it be prompted somehow that it would like to receive answer only above a certain level of confidence? Probably, but this would require adaptations. But typically, and it's also a personal opinion, but the Gen AI tools that we see have been made on a commercial purpose, and saying no to a customer, I don't want to answer to your question, is not in the business logic of the conception of these industry-based tools. But structurally, mathematically speaking, there is no problem in incorporating that. But I'm not sure it is done, and I'm pretty sure it is not in the actual context.
Okay. Thank you very much, Olivier. It was a pleasure for me to share this session with you. And we are on the end of the webinar. So I just want to say thank you to all the participants. Thank you for your interest. We hope that the presentation has been useful for you, and maybe we will have the opportunity to be with you in another webinar in the future, in another AAE webinar in the future. Thank you very much, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Bye.